What's up, guys? Let's talk RAW versus JPEG, JPEG versus RAW. I kind of looked through my old category of videos out, and I don't think I've actually put out a video just dedicated to this concept, or I guess this subject. And last week, I've had two people ask me about shooting RAW, and I'm like, oh my gosh, are we through with this? Okay, so let's get into this. Do I shoot RAW? Should you shoot RAW? Bigger question. Okay, get some perspective on RAW because it seems to still be around as something of I don't know, a myth, a rule, a belief that professionals shoot RAW. Everybody should shoot RAW. If you're experienced, you shoot RAW. It's kind of like one of those things of medium format. If I'm an experienced photographer, I shoot medium format because that gives me credentials, and that's kind of some of the things in the past that has reared its ugly head. So let's go back to the early 2000s and kind of give you a little bit of the history of RAW. Now, RAW in itself is kind of like all the information from your camera. You can set your white balance, some of the ISO, some of the exposure, post when you took the photo. So if you really mess it up, you can kind of go back and fix it. If you got different lighting and different color scheme and all that kind of stuff, you can flip switches in the application because you generally need an application that reads the raw file. It's not a JPEG, and it changes that information in it, and it goes back to a different state. So it gives you the most pristine data set to work off your image at that point in time. It's really a great insurance policy if you mess it up. But let's go back to how some of this stuff early got caught on. We've got YouTube channels where guys with shirts say they shoot raw like it matters or it makes them more professional. Okay, 2004-ish, five, I'm walking through a very large camera store, one of the bigger ones around in the United States. And I hear one of the guys, new people coming through wanting to buy a camera, and they start talking, well, this one has raw capability. And you could see the star eyes, the eyes of the people that are new. They don't know what raw is and why is it important. And it was one of the older gentlemen who was talking to this older lady about this. And then there was a young kid who I hadn't seen. He probably had a couple of years of photography, I'm guessing. And he's talking to some other younger guys. Well, I shoot raw and I do this. And he's kind of pounding his chest about this. And then that was kind of funny a little bit, but it actually got a little bit more interesting because after everybody was gone, these people were gone, the store cleared out. The older guy goes to the younger guy and says, I don't think, you keep talking about raw. You need to hold that down. You're not quite good enough to be using raw. Like it was some kind of feat, like credentials, some kind of barrier that you graduate into to be a good photographer. And so where's this put myself and that? First of all, you have to look at it this way. If you're a professional or if you're good and you need to, you set the wrong exposure or you set the wrong color scheme, your auto white balance is, fluorescent or light bulb or whatever, and you have to fix it later. Does that sound professional? I'm just like, you got to look at raw, shooting raw is an insurance plan to get you out of something that you messed up, right? That's one. There's a couple. That's one of the main ones for raw is the customization of the image. But it's also like if you're a wedding photographer, I would probably shoot raw just to make sure you cover your butt. If you're a landscape guy and you want to make sure you want the highlights and you want the dynamic range, you want a little more resolution, you get that kind of stuff. You get a little bit better image out of that. And it's a way to cover you to get the best image possible. Nothing wrong with that, right? And if you're taking photos of something very strange and you want to play around with it later and really push and pull the highlights, contrast, and get the detail and the colors, great, use raw as well. But know the reason why you're using raw, because there are so many downsides to using that format versus JPEG. It's a lot. So first of all, the size. A Sony a7R IV is 60 megapixels. JPEG plus RAW is going to put you like 125 megapixels in an image. If you're shooting sports or wildlife, you can do 10 to 15 frames a second. That's 1.5 gig of data in 1 second. It's enormous. It's enormous. The data store for RAW is gigantic, okay? The second part we need to kind of take into consideration is the availability of the RAW converter. Now, RAW is a proprietary kind of converter that looks at this data file versus JPEG. JPEG, you can kind of put it on any iPad, any PC, and kind of edit it. But when you're talking RAW, now you need a RAW driver. And sometimes you have to, if you switch machines, you're kind of screwed. If you switch cameras, you're kind of screwed. You got to download their proprietary software to get it. Sigma is a huge one. Sigma has a very unique RAW converter, and it's very good, but it's kind of a pain to use. So if you're finding yourself using a lot of different cameras and a lot of different machines to edit on, good luck. It becomes an absolute pain. So you got storage, you got the convenience of use in there. There's some hacks. If you're going to use RAW, you can kind of edit it on your camera and send it to JPEG and do the customization there. You can actually hook up an HDMI to your camera. They have some kind of conversion thing, and you can get it right that way. And it's a little bit easier because once you get it off, you got it in JPEG, you can kind of streamline it. But overall, think about it this way. Wildlife guys, I don't know a whole lot of wildlife guys. In fact, I think it's Paul Nicholson, a bunch of other guys said they do not shoot RAW. Myself, it's 95% not RAW, it's JPEG because we're streaming through there. The benefits of extra resolution and dynamic range just isn't worth it for me. I don't want to be behind a machine, a computer. I do that all day anyway. So I want to be out there, take a picture the way it looks and do that. Where I do use RAW is if you've seen me doing the iPhone or landscape, different kinds of photos, light painting. I use RAW because I push and pull the contrast lighting and shadows and everything everywhere to get what the photo I want. That's where it's good at. So indication, guys, use JPEG if it fits you. Use RAW, but just know why you want to use RAW to make the job easier to get it done. Just don't use it to kind of fit the credentials or because some guy in a camera store said you need it to be a professional. And that's just like everything else. Wildlife cameras, go in, ask people. They rarely ask, they really take into consideration your age. They rarely take into consideration the type of photographer, you are. They see themselves in everyone and they're like, oh, you need Nikon because I love Nikon or Sony or whatever. And it's really getting, the method that you use for JPEG or RAW to fit you. Myself, 99% of the time, 95, I don't use it. And I think the images are good enough. Get a little bit better, but hey, it's just less of a pain in the butt. I want to know your comments, questions down below. If you got any questions on JPEG versus RAW, anything like that. Because again, you get these questions that kind of come up. I thought it was kind of old school, dead. But again, we got guys with shirts running around with it on, and you go, okay, I guess you're a great photographer, right? See you later, guys.